Hey everybody, I wanted to show an implementation of OAuth 2 that's a little different than any of the implementations that I found when I was recently searching for a way of getting contents to show up on a web page through an OAuth 2 call. Like a lot of developers these days, I'm experienced with AJAX calls through JavaScript. That's not a whole lot of good for OAuth 2. So for a project that I was working on recently where I had to implement the call through OAuth 2, I had to discover a different way of doing this. And I just want to point out there's nothing wrong with using the PHP functions that are built in for doing this strictly within PHP. Admittedly, PHP is not my jam. I do not a whole lot of development through PHP, so I use it when it's a must. This is an implementation that is going to be a little bit more suitable for people who are a little more used to languages like Bash or JavaScript and things like that. This is using an API called Amadeus API. It's a travel API, and right now I'll show you the Bash functions underneath this, but it is all hard-coded right now. For the purposes of this, that's just fine. But this is actually pulling flights up, and I just have the PHP parsing it and loading it into the page. I'm not going to go too deep into the OAuth 2 part, but you have your curl request, and this is looking for the token. So if I just run this, it's got my client credentials and everything in there. If you were to format your curl request just like this, you should get an output similar to what's down here. And the token here is within this. And again, I'll show you how this is called through the PHP. But then we can run get, can't type. We can run it with the token, and it's going to populate a response with all of those flights. And I'll show you really quickly the bash function that I wrote to do that. And this is seriously just a very simple curl request. You have the first parameter coming in, which you just saw me call it with that token. Again, if you haven't looked too far into OAuth 2, you need to first make a call to get a token with your client credentials, and then make a second call with the token, and that's kind of the secret sauce with OAuth 2. Okay, so I have two bash functions. That's pretty simple to do. You'll be able to find all kinds of stuff online about how to do that. And then it's a matter of running these functions from the PHP and passing back to the PHP their responses. So let's pull up index.php, and this is where I have this going. I have two PHP functions down here. The first one is getToken. You have a variable that is decoding the result of that bash function, if that makes sense. So this right here, shell execute, is basically just going to do what is in the quotations here. So bash Amadeus calls getToken. You can see the bash function is within this Amadeus calls, so that's just the path. And again, bash getToken.sh is going to return that. And I have that getting put into this JSON, and then basically searching. If the key is equal to access token, then we're going to return the value of that, which is this here. Okay, and that is just a little bit simpler of a way than trying to parse that JSON, or parse putting these both in the same bash function. You could do that, and most likely would work. There's a couple different ways you could work through that string and pull this token out, but PHP has a nice JSON parse functionality built into it, and that's something I did know how to use, so that's what I did there. Okay, so that's returning that. So when this function getFlights gets called, we're saying to run bash Amadeus calls getFlights, and it's passing this getToken. And so this is actually the results of this getToken, which is returning this token. And so what I do then is just say, this is a new JSON, get flights, and it's returning all of this, which was shown here. And so it takes a second to return all that. But this JSON is the return of this function, get flights, which is returning the result of calling get flights with the token that's returned from this function. Okay, so that's, again, really quick. I'm not going to go too deeply into all of this. This is parsing the JSON. Let's echo JSON decode get flights. And, if I didn't mess this up, oops, it should be JSON encode. Let's do that again. Okay. That is the output of that function before I end up parsing it and applying some styling to it and things like that. If you need some help with doing that, feel free to comment on this video and I'll try and point you in the right direction. But that's basically how I am doing an OAuth 2 call and getting it to eventually turn into this.